So last week we spoke about Hatmana. Hatmana means cover food. You're not allowed to cover food. And you're not allowed to cover food before Shabbat in something that adds heat. Which means, let's say you have an electric blanket and you want to cover your food with an electric blanket, that you're not allowed to do before Shabbat. Even though your food is fully cooked. You have soup, and your soup is fully cooked 100%. And you want to cover it up with electric blanket in order for it to add heat. So you come on Shabbat, it's very hot. You're not allowed to do that. That's called Hatmana.Wrapping mosif hevel. That's asur. And the scenario would be more practical when, let's say, you put the soup on your hot plate and you want to cover it up with a blanket. That's also asur. We just mentioned last week that there are some that have a minhag to do such a thing. Some Sfaradim have a minhag to do such a thing. Chacham Ovadia points it out, and the Or LeZion points it out. So if you have such a minhag, fine. If not, the Shulchan Aruch says that's a violation of Hatmana on Shabbat. You're not allowed to do such a thing, according to Shulchan Aruch. So that comes out in many different scenarios, which means, let's say you have the urn we spoke about last week, and you have that blanket, that cover that comes on top, the cloth thing that comes on top, and it wraps it up. That would be a sur of Hatmana. Now, one of the more common Hatmanot is the crock pot. Why? Because the crock pot goes inside, and it's covered within walls that heat it up. That is called Hatmana.Wrapping mosif hevel. Although your chamin, your cholent, is fully cooked, you're still not allowed to have it in such a thing, according to some opinion. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach held, this is Hatmana, it's not permitted. For Ashkenazim, they have a solution that they could put something on the bottom, pick up the pot a little bit, and it would be permitted. Because according to Ashkenazim, according to the Rama, the isur of Hatmana is only if it's fully covered. But if it's not fully covered, it will be permitted. So therefore, let's say you take a stone, you put it on top of the bottom of the pot, and that picks up the pot, right, between the pot and the heating element. That picks up the pot. Some say that it's not enough just to pick up the pot a little bit. It needs to be that the food, it needs to be by the place where the food is on the pot. So you have to pick it up a little bit more than that. We spoke about this last week. But according to Sfaradi opinion, which is the Shulchan Aruch, in Resh Nun Gimel, even Hatmana b'miktzat is asur. Even if a little bit your pot is wrapped, is covered, you're not allowed to have such a Hatmana. So according to Sfaradim, this would be much more strict to use a crack pot. Now, la'alacha, one should really not buy such a crack pot. But if you do, you could rely on Chacham Ovadia that was lenient about it. Why? He said you can add all kind of different leniencies to permit such a thing. Like for instance, Rav Yeshaya Rishon brings down that that manah that's asur, it's only if you're planning to eat the food tonight, but not if you're planning to eat the food tomorrow morning. So since the chamin is for tomorrow morning, that according to him will be permitted. The Rema in the beginning of Resh Nun Zayin brings it down la'alacha. Another opinion that you could permit this crack pot is to say that since there's some space between the pot and the cover around it, the metal around it, so there's some kind of space, that's also something that you could permit. Now, Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach said that that's not enough, that space, to consider it not wrapped. It needs to be wrapped, and it is wrapped. So it's not touching 100%. Is that enough? So according to Chacham Ovadia, he says, yes, it is enough also. Rav Elyashiv held that way. It's brought down already in the Rishonim. The Ritva and the Ramban bring such an idea if it's not touching. But over here, you can argue it's touching. It really is touching. It's just such a space just to be able to take it in and out without pushing it into the thing. So therefore, according to that, you could look at it in something that's permitted or not. Chacham Ovadia held that it's another reason to permit. Also, if you add the Rama opinion we spoke about, that Hatmana b'miktzat is not a Hatmana, although we don't posek like this opinion, but it's enough just to add more leniencies to permit such a crack pot. And finally, you have the Gidulei Tzion Chacham Ovadia brings down that says there could be that Hatmana that Chachamim were Oser is only such a Hatmana that slowly the heat goes down. Back then, you used to leave the coals and you used to wrap the pot with the coals around, and the coals would slowly would dim and lose heat. But today, it's electric, so the heat is the same level. Nobody's going to come to play with the fire. So according to that, that's another reason to be more lenient. But lemaase, halacha lemaase, when we go to buy a crack pot, try to buy an open one, not the one that's wrapped all around. So I want to show you which one it is, because when I spoke to some people, they didn't know what it is. So this is what it is. Right? Here it is. Right? Could be not. It's by tomorrow morning. By tomorrow morning it will be fine. Right? Here it is. It's open. You put one on top of the other, and it's all good. That's completely open. It's like an open MRI. Today nobody goes to MRI. They want an open MRI. If it's not open MRI, they don't go. Right? Even open MRI is already too hard to go. So this is an open crack pot. You have no problem. What about this rim around that covers? We said even Hatmana b'miktzat is asur. And the Shulchan Aruch says that what's Hatmana b'miktzat? That when you put the pot, the coals go around the pot a little bit. Could be on the bottom, could be around the pot a little bit. They're touching the round of the pot. So that's also Hatmana b'miktzat. That's not permitted. So that should be not permitted. So we explained last week that is only time it's not permitted if it's made to hit the pot. But over here, really, it goes up a little bit just to hold it in its place. Then it shouldn't move. So for that, you can permit it. That's not called Hatmana b'miktzat. So this is something important. How about the cover? You have the cover on top. Cover is not considered Hatmana. Why? Because that's a normal way of using the pot, by putting the cover on top. And that's first of all. Secondly, it's not wrapping the food. We explained last time that when you put the food in the oven, that's not Hatmana. Why? It's wrapped in the walls of the oven because it's not touching the pot. Hatmana is only when it's touching the pot. If it's not touching, it's permitted. That is Hatmana bedavar hamosif hevel before Shabbat. So again, if you're planning to buy one, you don't have one yet, buy this one, and then you have no issues in a halacha. If you have already and you want to rely on Chacham Ovadia, of Shlomo Zalman Auerbach held mamash it's Hatmana, it's davar asur. And according to Sfaradim, it's even worse, as I explained, that even Hatmana b'miktzat is asur. But if one wants to be lenient, Chacham Ovadia is lenient. Okay? This is the crack pot. Now, yeah.
What if you flip the cover? That cover, that's what they...
No, that is fine the way it is. Yeah, it's fine. That's fine. Oh, yeah. You can put food on top. You flip the pot cover like this, you can put the food on top, and you can put the food straight over here as well. Because that's just like a hot plate, right? Some would say that this is meant to cook. Right. Since some say that this is meant to cook, and since it's meant to cook, so one needs to cover this with aluminum foil. Right? So you put an aluminum foil, and on top of that, you can put food. Can you put the aluminum foil on Shabbat? Yes. You're allowed to put it on Shabbat. Okay? This is when we're talking about food.
Also for the cover, also for the red.
Over here, you don't need aluminum foil, because that's not the normal way to cook, to put on top of... Under, over here. Do you need to put an aluminum foil under over here when you put this on Shabbat? Right? Before Shabbat. You put this on before Shabbat. Should you cover with aluminum foil between the pot and the heating element? Is that needed? We explained that the only time, even if you hold that this is not covered of fire, which means it's not garuf vekatum, as we explained. Even if you hold that way, even if you hold that it's normal to cook on such a thing, and that's nothing strange, and therefore you need to cover up the fire. But that is only true when you want to do chazara, you want to return the food to the fire. if you leave something on it from before Shabbat, that's not asur unless the food is not cooked half. Kemachal ben dorsai, half. There's machloket if you need to have half or whole, fully cooked. Does it need to be fully cooked or half cooked? Le'alacha, the minhag Sfaradim, although the Shulchan Aruch seems to hold it needs to be fully cooked before Shabbat in order to leave it straight on the fire, on open fire, otherwise you need to cover the fire. But, le'alacha, we are lenient. The minhag of the Sfaradim is to be more lenient and to hold that half-cooked, kemachal ben dosai, is sufficient. Machloket also if you need half-cooked or third-cooked. Machloket Rashi and the Rambam. But one should try to have it half-cooked. Once it's half-cooked, you can leave it without putting a silver foil. Even if you hold that this is considered open fire. Same as open fire, because it's normal to cook on it. Still, it would be fine as long as it's half-cooked. It's considered Kemachal ben dorsai. What's Kemachal ben dorsai? Ben dorsai was a robber, and he was always on the run. So whenever he needed to cook, to eat, he would cook half or third cooked, which means as long as it's just edible, just edible, he would cook to that level, eat very quickly because he didn't have time. He had to be always on the run. So this is why it's called Kemachal ben dorsai. It's like the level of food that ben dorsai would eat and cook, and that's sufficient. That's good. That is what we need to do in order to keep the crack pot on the fire. If your food is, if let's say you have over here food that you feel that it's not yet half cooked, so put a silver foil under to be those opinions. Okay. Now, this is all true. We explained that that's only true when we're dealing with something that adds fire, like this over here. But on Shabbat itself, you're not allowed to cover even if something doesn't add fire. Which means, let's say, on Shabbat itself, you have the soup. And the soup, you're afraid it's going to get cold. You shut off the heat, and you didn't leave your hot plate on. You didn't leave it on. And now you have over here a soup. And by the time your husband will come, it's going to get a little bit colder. So what do you want to do? On Shabbat itself, you want to wrap it with a blanket or with a towel. Can you do that? The halacha is on Shabbat you can't cover such a thing. Before Shabbat, you could, because it's not davar mosif hevel. On Shabbat, you can't. Now, again, we spoke before that there's such a minhag that Chacham Ovadia brings. Some have a minhag, some Sfaradim have a minhag, kadmon, that they wrap the food before Shabbat. But those that don't have it can't wrap it on Shabbat. You can't wrap the soup on Shabbat with the towel or anything else that adds heat. Let's remind what we said last week. What about you have now your kugel over here, and you want to put it inside the chamin, inside the chulin. But you want to put it in such a way you don't want it to get mixed with the chamin and to get all soggy and you lose it once you put it in there. You want to keep it by itself, separated. So what do? You wrap it in aluminum foil and you put it inside the chulin. Can you do that? We said that you're allowed to do that. It's wrapping it and putting it inside the chulin. How could you do that? We explained that it's permitted because you're not doing it in order to add heat to it, but rather, why are you doing it? That you should stay separated. Whenever your intention is not that it should add heat, it's permitted. Therefore, the Shulchan Aruch brings down that if you cover something in order that it's not going to get dirty, for instance, so that's permitted. That's not different. You want to put it
into the crack pot?
Inside the crack pot.
So it's not hatmana?
It's not hatmana. Why not? Although you put it and you wrapped it inside the aluminum foil. Why is it not hatmana? Because you're not doing it for hatmana. You're not doing it for heat. You're not doing it because you want it to be more hot. You're putting the aluminum foil in order that it should not get mixed in with the chulent. Right? Same thing.
It's not considered hatmana?
The pot itself, again, we're dealing right now, you want to do it whether it's before Shabbat or on Shabbat. But before Shabbat, let's say, you're putting it inside. Can you put it inside in such a way. Can you put the kugel inside the cholent before Shabbat?
Yes.
The way it is, for sure. It's food. You're putting it inside the pot. It's not hatmana. Putting inside a pot, it's not hatmana. Why? Because hatmana is when you wrap the pot. The pot itself holds the food. You need something to hold the food. Now, if you wrap the pot, that's davar asur. So you're allowed to put the kugel inside. Can you wrap it in aluminum foil and put it inside? Or can you put the rice in such a bag and put it inside? So it depends what you're doing it for. If you're doing it in order that you should get hotter, that's where you put the aluminum foil. In other words, would it get hotter if you put it in aluminum foil than if you put it without it? Yes, and that's your intention, that's the problem. But if it's not going to get hotter, it would be as hot whether you put it in aluminum foil or you don't. Or even if it would get hotter, but it's not your intention. That's not what you care about. You just don't want it to get mixed in. You don't want it to get soggy. You don't want it that it should be, it would fall apart and become pieces, becomes liquidy, whatever it is. That's your intention, that's mutar. That's the way we explained it last week. And this is nafka mina in many different times that you come to wrap something. What is the reason you're wrapping it? You need to have that in mind. Is it because I need it wrapped so it could get hotter? Or I need it wrapped so it's not going to get mixed within the food or get dirty or whatever it is? Then it will be permitted.
So the wrapping is only asur on Shabbat.
Wrapping is asur even before Shabbat if it's on a place that adds heat. So let's summarize this. If you are doing something before Shabbat, it needs to be such that adds heat. Then it's asur. But wrapping let's say your soup, and it's not on the fire. You have your soup, and you took it out of the fire, you closed the fire. Now, right before candle lighting, you took out the soup, you don't want to leave the fire on. You heat it up, now it's very hot, it's boiling. Now you want to wrap it with a towel. That's permitted. Why? Towel is not davar musif hevel. It's not adding heat. You're allowed to do that before Shabbat. Once it's Shabbat, the night started, it's already stars outside, and it's Shabbat, you can't wrap it with that towel. Okay? Yeah.
Didn't you say something about poking a hole?
Right. Now, some want to be more strict. That's a machloket. Which means I just told you it's completely permitted to take that cholent and put it, to take that kugel, wrap it in aluminum foil, and put it inside the cholent. That's fine. Because the only reason you're doing so is in order that it's not going to get mixed in the chamin. Some say no, it's still not permitted. You need to make holes in it in order that it would get the flavor of the chamin. It needs to be part of the food. Right? We spoke about this last week. Two opinions. The Maisa one could be lenient if it feels that making holes would not satisfy his taste in the kugel or whatever it is. He doesn't like it. There's room to be lenient because majority of the poskim permit without the holes. Okay? Yes.
So if you have foil trays and to heat up, something dry, or even like, let's say liquid things right before Shabbat, you're putting it on a hot plate. It can't be covered before? Can it be covered in foil before, or it can't?
No, well, before Shabbat, it depends if it's adding heat or it's not adding heat. So you're putting it in aluminum foil before Shabbat. Right. What are you planning to do with it? If you're planning to put it on a hot plate, you're putting it on a hot plate to warm up. Why did you cover it? Did you cover it in aluminum foil in order that it would get hotter? If you don't put it in aluminum foil, you put it the way it is, so it's not going to get so hot. So you want it very hot, you're wrapping it up. That will preserve the heat and will add heat to it. That's asur. But let's say the reason you are covering it, you are wrapping it, is not for that. It's because you know that once you put it on the hot plate, it's going to get dry. From the air, it's going to get dry. So therefore, that's the reason you're wrapping it. So it's not going to get dry, but it's going to get as hot regardless of it. Whatever heat it gets to, that's sufficient for you, even without it. Then the chiluk would be that over here, in such a scenario, would be if you mean that not for the heat, it would be mutar. Okay? That's before Shabbat. Before Shabbat. On Shabbat itself, you can't wrap it even to preserve the heat. Not that it should add heat, to preserve the heat. You understand? The difference is like this. It's a little complicated, right? Is it? Who got it? Nobody got it. But that's important. Let's say it again. You got it?
Yes, but that's because the last time, now it's just a review, so it's easier.
So let's say you have schnitzel and you want to put it on the hot plate on Shabbat day, right? So how do you warm it up on the hot plate? Don't you have to put a foil, you have to put it
Right.
on top of a foil?
Yes.
But that's okay to do.
That's
as long as
fine.
you don't
It's not
cover it.
permitted. It's not covered.
Right.
It's not wrapped.
So you could put a piece of foil, you said last time, like you just put it on.
Yes.
Not wrapping and you're not tucking it under?
Right. If you're not wrapping it, we're talking today only wrapping. Wrapping. Are you allowed to wrap it on Shabbat and before Shabbat? That's the question. The difference between before Shabbat and on Shabbat is does it add heat or it doesn't? The difference would be like this. If you have a hot plate, you're wrapping the kugel in order, let's talk about you want it to get very hot. You have a hot plate, you're wrapping the kugel, whatever it is, whatever you eat, right? You eat maza, you have maza. You're wrapping it, and now you're putting it on top of the hot plate to add heat. That's the reason you're putting it there. That's not permitted even before Shabbat. But if you're not doing so at a hot plate, so before Shabbat, it's permitted. You're not doing it on a hot plate. Let's say you have the soup, it's hot. You're not putting it on a hot plate. You're just covering it to preserve the heat. That's permitted before Shabbat. Once we're talking on Shabbat, Shabbat is already more strict. It's Shabbat itself. Shabbat, you're not allowed to wrap it, even if it's not Mosif Hevel, even if it doesn't add heat. I want to know from those that didn't get it, because we're going to say it again. We're here to say it again.
Just a question.
I thought a brave one.
If you have like a silver foil pan, not like silver foil itself, and you put food inside, can you put a piece of silver foil on top like a lid? It should be more like a lid as opposed to,
It's
as opposed to
mutar for two reasons. One reason is why
So there's space.
the space, it's not wrapping. You're not wrapping the food. You're not even wrapping the
Air can get out.
Well, no, I mean, like even if you wrap, but it's something more like a lid that you're covering, and there's some space in between the food and the.
But even not the food. You didn't cover the
Right, no.
the tray itself. What did you call it? What did you put it?
A pan, I guess.
The pan. So you didn't cover the pan. You just put it on top. So it's not covered. That's first of all. Secondly, why are you covering it? Because you don't want it to get dirty, to get dry, to get this, to get that, but not in order that it should get more hot. If you're doing it to get more hot, so you have the other reason to permit it, that it's not wrapped. Yeah?
Now, what about the crack pot? If it's a Shabbat mode,
Right.
so why it's not permitted?
Oh, so why is it not permitted before Shabbat to have a crack pot?
It's on
That goes one inside the other, not like this. One inside the other.
Yes,
Why is it not permitted? Good question. What's the answer to the question?
because it's wrapped.
Oh,
And the heat keeps yeah, I know that it's wrapped, but it's...
no, not because the heat keeps on going. Because Chazal said you're not allowed, the halakha says you're not allowed to have it wrapped. Gendik, that's it. You're not allowed to have it wrapped. Even if all the excuses, Shabbat mode, the food is delicious, whatever you want, none of these excuses would work. You're not allowed to have it wrapped. You know why Chazal said you're not allowed to have it wrapped? The reason Chazal said you're not allowed to have it wrapped is because back then they used to have coals, as I explained before. And we were afraid that if it's something that's Mosif Hevel, you have it wrapped in such things. On Shabbat, you play around with the coals in order to heat it up more. So therefore, that's then. So once Chazal said that that's asur, they said not that you're not allowed to have the food wrapped in coals. They said you're not allowed to have the food wrapped in anything when it adds heat. So that becomes a law forever and ever. That whenever the food is wrapped in something that adds heat, it's not permitted, and that's it. Now, let me just add to that an important point, and that is the Ben Ish Chai explains beautifully that all the laws that Chazal said, although they told us the reason, and you can say, well, the reason doesn't apply here. Doesn't apply. Like here you say, the reason doesn't apply. What do you want? there's no coals. What's going to be? First of all, you could come to raise the heat. Just like by coals, you can come to raise the heat over here. But even without that, let's say you find a case that there's no way to raise the heat. It doesn't have a button to raise the heat. Or you put it on the highest. Yeah, Or Letzion speaks about what if you put it on the highest. Machloket Or Letzion and Moshe. But without that, that's for Shiyah. But let's say such a thing. The Ben Ish Chai explains that all the laws that Chazal tell us really have hidden laws, al pi Kabbalah, al pi Sod, hidden laws, hidden reasons, not laws, hidden reasons, which are according to Kabbalah. All Chazal told us, those reasoning that we're saying, those are the nigle, the open reasoning. But there's really reasons that are much more deep, that have much more meaning to them. But in order for us to understand them, we need to know Kabbalah. Ben Ish Chai knew Kabbalah. He knew to tell us that. We don't know Kabbalah, so we can only deal with what Chazal told us openly, what the Halakha tells us openly. Okay? More questions? Yes, Bechavod.
So we received a ceramic crock pot. We first got married as a gift, an engagement gift. And I've been using that all the years we were married. And it's an insert that goes inside, so I should not use it on Shabbat and get a Shabbat, like a...
So I'll tell you what. Chacham Ovadia permits to use it. Ashkenazim definitely have much more leniency, as we explained. Chacham Ovadia also, for Sfaradim, permits to use it. If I were you, I just went today to the store. This is brand new. I bought this, dipped it in the mikveh. By the way, you don't need to dip this. This doesn't touch the food, only this. And also the cover needs to be dipped. Why the cover needs to be dipped? It doesn't touch the food.
It's removed, no?
But it doesn't touch the food, only something that touches the food. Because it's steam. Steam that goes to it is considered like it's touching the food. It's glass. Glass needs to be dipped. There's two things that need to be dipped. Metal and glass. Metal midoraita, according to majority of Rishonim. And glass is only the Rabbanan. But even though it's only the Rabbanan, we have to dip it. And even if we dip it, we say a bracha on it. Over here, you just need to say one bracha, because you're dipping the metal. When you dip metal and glass, what should you dip first? Say the bracha, Shokichanu Vitzotav Tzivanu Itvol Keli. Kli, it's one keli, right? It's not kelim. When it's two utensils, you do kelim. Over here, it's one, even though there's two things here, but it's one. It's the cover of the pot. When you want to dip, which one will you dip? The glass or the metal? Metal. Why? Deoraita. Trying to satisfy the Deoraita. That's more important than the Rabbanan. So you dip this first, and then you dip that. When you dip, make sure that you don't hold it tight, because then it's chatzitza. Your hands are holding that place, and water doesn't get there. So what's the idea? Either when you put it in, let it loose for a second, split second, and then you hold it back. Or first wet your hands inside the water, and then when you're holding it, that's good enough.
If the cover of the pot is cement, you still say kli?
Yes. Right, singular. When is it plural? When you have more than one keli. This is considered one keli. And this element you don't want to dip anyway, right? It's the engine, it's the metal, it's the, what do you call it? Electricity. But it doesn't touch the food anyway, so it doesn't make any difference.
What about those electric griddles for pancakes, the griddles?
Anything that they need dipping, and usually all those things that are electric, you could dip them, and usually nothing happens to them. If it's not digital, nothing happens to them, but you have to give them a good few days to dry, and usually nothing happens to them, but there is a small chance that they're not going to work. You're taking that chance. So a person that doesn't want to take that chance, he has few different suggestions. One is to give it to give it to somebody that's a professional, to be able to unscrew some pieces from the machine that you need a professional to put it back together. Not every person could put it back together. You need a professional. You need an electrician or whatever it is. A professional if you were to put it together, you wouldn't know what to do. And it needs to be a Jewish person, and then it's considered that it's nigmar al yedei Yehudi. It's considered like a Jewish person did it. You don't need to be tovel. That's first of all. Another idea, that's what Rav Elyashiv says. Another more easy solution is to sell it to a goy. You sell it to a goy, somebody that you know well, one of your workers. You tell him, do me a favor, here, buy it for $1. Give him the $1 beforehand. Buy it for $1. It's yours. Once he buys it, you give him the $1. He gives you the $1. It connect, kinyan kesef. Once you take the $1, that becomes his. Once it becomes his, you ask him, can you do me a favor? I need to use it. Can you mind if I take it? No problem, take it. He knows you well. So take it. Now you're using it. Kelim of a goy don't need tvila. Only Jewish kelim need tvila. So that's a beautiful solution.
It's a pot made in China, so I don't need to make tvila. Only clean.
Of course you need. It's made by a goy. So you need to be tovel, but only if it's yours. But if it doesn't belong to you, it doesn't belong to you. How will that belong to you? It still belongs to the goy. Let's say you go to the store owner. You tell him, give it to me. Let me use your keli. He's not going to give it to you. You need to pay for it. I'm here to make money. I'm not here for letting you use my utensils. But once you buy it and you go to your neighbor and you tell him, do me a favor, I need you to buy it, and then I need to use it. No problem. Now it's yours. Here, you bought it. It's yours, not mine. It's like mechirat chametz. It's real. It's real to the point that, let's say, the neighbor tells you know what? I'm keeping it. There's nothing to do. You call the rabbi, you're not going to believe what happened. I sold him the thing. I bought it for $70. He gave me $1, and now he doesn't want to give it back to me. You're right. That's another chance you're taking. Just like putting it into the water, you're taking a certain chance. But usually that also doesn't happen. He says, take it, no problem. And then you can use it. So, some poskim don't like it. After 30 days, they say that you need to be tovel anyway. But there's enough poskim to rely on that they say that this is good enough. This is how Ben Ish Chai held. This is how the Chemed brings down in Chat Yitzchak, Aruch HaShulchan, that it's fine to use it in Chacham Ovadia. It's fine to use it like that. Yes?
So something like a water urn or...
Yes, same thing.
How about a
All
toaster?
same thing. The only thing you should not dip is something digital, like the Keurig machine. That's problematic, because it's digital. That could really ruin it. So for such things, take the other solutions that I told you, either to break it and have a professional put it together, or sell it to a goy.
So you're saying porcelain dishes we don't need to use?
Right, porcelain according to halakha doesn't need. Some wanted to be machmir. Aruch HaShulchan was looking for a reason. Why is it? And he said maybe not to be mechalek. People will get mixed up. But and some poskim say to dip it without a bracha. But lemaise, I tell people, and this is the minhag Chacham Ovadia brings down. No, you don't need to dip it. It's fine without dipping it. Chazak u'baruch.